Last year I brought to you the Trixy Blox Co. This one I'm bringing you the Wither Dragon Skeleton. Never forget about your comment even if I did take my sweet time to do it. Anyways, onto the build. And with the sun setting right behind us, why don't we get into how to make this sort of builds? Yup, organic builds once again, but unlike last time, I'm gonna let you in a little secret. What's the secret, you may ask? It's definitely not blueprints. This is a way to make you make the build, but not to actually teach you how to make this. So let's get into the actual process, shall we? First thing you're gonna notice with organic builds is we're having here this little spiral. The dragon skeleton is gonna be over. If you look closely, you can see that it resembles the spine of the actual dragon build in the end. Why do we have to do this? Because this is gonna make everything else way simpler. So step 1, the line work. Step 2 is adding the details to set line work. Here, as you can see, the skull is already placed down. Kind of where it's gonna be. It's of course not the final size yet, but it's getting an idea of how it's gonna look. Same thing goes with all the skeleton, and by all the skeleton I mean the wings and the place where the ribs are gonna be at, aka the body. Yes, in here we also have this little intersection marked down a little bit with glass in order to identify that it's part of something else. This is step 2, completing the line work. Step 3 is where stuff starts getting interesting, because here is when we're actually gonna start doing a little bit of the 3D modeling. First thing you're gonna notice is all the lines were raised up to about what's gonna end up being their final position. Then again, these ones are not completely the way they're gonna do, and you don't have to make them all in different phases. I just made it like this so it's easier to see. We also started marking down the bones that are gonna be parts of the claws or the hands, however you wanna call them. They are the wings after all, but without this, yeah, it's not gonna fully work. And yes, these are a little bit shorter than they should be in order to allow the dragon to fly, but then again it's a skeleton. A lot of stuff has already been weathered down. Next thing you're gonna notice, the skull. The skull is already pretty much done. Mainly we did like this line in the middle to identify when the top part gets divided from the bottom one. We started raising up everything up to 4 blocks, adding here a little bit of detail like the nostrils and a little bit of slab work. As you can see, yeah, the blocks are a little bit messy, but we're gonna get to that in a moment. Another thing you're gonna notice is we placed down the actual arms of the dragon, or legs. I think they are like 4 legs. And here, yeah, there's a little bit of a difference from here, because in here the original plan was to make it like turn around and then the leg would be like kind of a sleeping dog. I mean, the pose is of a sleeping dragon after all, you know? But there's a little bit of changes that I'm gonna explain afterwards. And yeah, this was step 3. The 3D modeling begins. Passing from step 3 to step 4. First thing you're gonna notice is the rib cage was completely redone. Why was this? Because the last detail was considering all the bones to be right, and then these ones are having a little bit of a bend in the end, but that's not how it would be in reality, you know? That's more like a placeholder before we actually start making it look pretty. So what did we do here? We started up by curving every single bone down. We also changed the little bit of what were them? The cobblestone walls that were on top, or well, deep plate, doesn't matter. The wall shape was changed for slabs. Why? Because it's a little bit more subtle and it works a little bit better as well. It does imply that we can no longer do the little curvature that we could have done with the walls because we have no vertical slabs after all. But it does allow us to make a little bit more detail with the rib cage. We also raised up the bones, and by bones I mean spine. We perfected the legs. As you can see here, they are no longer sideways, they were moved in order to fit in with this new side, and they were placed down all the way with a little bit of bends and slabs and old stairs. Like the final shape is already being done here. Same thing goes with this, you know, all the the claws are now also made out of walls. Same goes with the last part of the tail and the second part of the wings. All of this in order to make it look way more like the final product. At the same time, here in the skull, we can notice that now the actual skull does have like the eyes openings, the mouth openings. Everything else here is already more detailed than it was before, and it starts looking way more like the final product. I mean, if you look at this, other than the colors, it's pretty much already done. But that's what does step step 4, the finishing of the 3D modeling. Now then, before step 5, you have to do something quite interesting, and it's playing around with the type of blocks that you're gonna use. Why? Not because all of them are going in step 5, but because it's important to plan it out, you know? For example, here we have that the deep slate tiles go well along with the deep slate tiles in cracked version and netherite. Why is this important? Because we're gonna need a main block, one that has stairs, slabs and walls, preferably in this case in order to have the most amount of detail possible, and then we're gonna want 2 asset colors for it. In case of the polished deep slate, we don't have their asset color right next to it, but we have them here. It's gonna be the cracked brick and the normal deep slate brick. As for the cobble deep slate, we're gonna be using deep slate coal ore and normal deep slate. As you can see, most of these are the same palette, they blend in together, but those different 3 sections blend in together with themselves better than they do with the other sides. Now, with all of this done, we can move on to the proper step 5, which is changing all the blocks to what would be their final base blocks. As you can see, the skull alongside with the claws and the legs are all now made out of cobbled deep slate. The spine on its own, on the other hand, is made out of polished deep slate. Same goes with the collarbones and the pelvis bones, with all the tail. Well, the tail is part of the spine after all. And then we have the deep slate tiles for the rest of the rib cage and the wings. Why are they all different if in reality all the bones would look the same? In order to add more variety, because this wouldn't look as good if every single block was the same, and even here it's not the final product. As I said, step 5 is only getting the final base blocks, not actually doing the magic part that is texturing. And now it feels proper that the sun is setting down once again, because we can now see it in all its glory with its burning fiery eyes. That, yeah, the detailing does make a huge difference, you know? Like the coal ore as well as the normal deep slate, they have a little bit of variance to this texture that it wouldn't have otherwise, because for example, stuff like the slabs are all gonna be the same texture, so you're gonna need to put some different texture somewhere else, you know? Also, we added into the insides a little bit of teeth. Well, these ones were since the last time, and yes, they don't look as clean as they would do with a debug stick, but that is because, well, in survival mode, you're not always gonna have a debug stick. And in case you were wondering how it looks with it, we have it right here in the previous one, which is, yeah, not exactly the same type of blocks, but we have the debug stick right here. And yes, they don't look as good as the dripstone, but dripstone just doesn't fit in with deep slate that well. As for the rest of the texturing, now that it's daytime and we can actually see it better, you can notice in same here with the legs, they have the deep slate and the cobalt and the coal ore, but for example here in the wings we have some cracked bricks here and there, a little bit of netherite blocks. Yeah, that's a little bit too expensive if you're doing this in survival mode, so maybe just more cracked deep slate. As well as the walls, yeah, we have a little bit of a thing with the walls, that is, if we change the texture, we don't have the same advantage here that we have very similar blocks to it, so we have to remain with these ones. That's why it's very important to have a different type of wall that blends in order to make the claws, because if it were all the same one, yeah, it would be really hard to recognize what is supposed to be what. And here in the spine you can see the bricks coming on here and there. Of course, this is not what a real bone would look like, but it's our Minecraft equivalent in order to make it look all quite nice. And how does that even happen? Way better. And with step 6 done, aka texturing, we've reached the end of the video, and before you go, I'm gonna invite you to ratify that red subscribe button, leave a like, and more importantly, if you want to see what the Dripstone Rex build was actually like, click the link on the top right. And if you would like to see another build, do you think that you would like the one in the bottom right? Are they right? Are they wrong? I don't know. Comment it down below. This is all from us today. We'll see you next time. Reach out.